Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pacharini Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachai Dasatani. So this morning in the first part we will discuss Isopanisad, mantra 12, 13, 14. In the last three verses we discussed the meaning of vidya and avidya in 3 verses. And now we have again a set of 3 verses where we will discuss Sambhuta and Asambhuta. What is supreme and what is not supreme. And these words will have different meanings in different verses. So in text 12, which we will first read, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Andam Tama Pavishyanti Ye Sambhutim Upasate Tato Bhayaiva Te Tamo Yau Sambhutyam Gata. Those who are engaged in the worship of demigods enter into the darkness region of ignorance, and still more do so the worshippers of the impersonal Absolute. So, that's text 12. Our Sambhuti takes one to darkness, and Sambhuti, worshipping what is supreme, takes one to greater darkness. And in the next verse, it said our Sambhuti will give one result, and Sambhuti another result. And the 14th verse, the 3rd verse, says Asambhuti and Sambhuti. One should know them both, and to both they will grant immortality. So that is again the enigmatic, puzzling nature of the Isopanisad. One must understand the deeper meaning to make sense of it. And these words have different meanings in different contexts, and here are the meanings. That's just for the sake of introduction. In the Asambhuti, in mantra 12 means worship of the demigods. And Sambhuti means the worship of the impersonal absolute truth. And in mantra 13, Asambhuti means anything other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Sambhuti means worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in verse mantra 14, Asambhuti means knowledge of the material world, and Sambhuti means knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So these words have different meanings. So in mantra 12, Srila Prabhupada has a purport of 10 paragraphs, and in the first 3 paragraphs he discusses how demigods and even rishis and even demigods misunderstand the Absolute to be impersonal. Then paragraph 4.7, Srila Prabhupada explains, yes, those who worship demigods get benefit, but they stay in this material world. It's a place of ignorance. And then the last 4 paragraphs, 7 to 10, Srila Prabhupada explains how impersonalists mislead people, and they go to the darkness region of hell. So for understanding the meanings of this Asambhuti and Sambhuti, we need to understand the text and the context. Meaning and semantics is a profound branch of knowledge. Semantics means the science of meanings. So words have certain meanings because people use them in a certain context. And within if it's used in a certain context, the meaning of the words are changed. So the surroundings in which a word is used is important. Those who are engaged in worship of the demigods enter the darkest region of ignorance, and still more do so the worshippers of the impersonal absolute. So we have here this interview, that overview, I mean. So the scriptures mention that the Lord is so great and is not easy to understand. So in 10:2 of Bhagavad Gita, Nate Vidu Suraganai Prabhavana Maharsha Amana Adir Idevana Marshinam Sarvasa. Neither the host of demigods nor the great sages know me, Krishna says. They don't know my origin. They don't know my opulences. Because they don't know me, because I am the source of the demigods. So also Arjuna says, just see. Okay, we'll come to that. So Arjuna says in 10:14, Naite Bhagavam Vyaktim Virtu Deva Nadanava in Bhagavad Gita. Neither the demigods nor the demons, O Lord, can understand your personality. So it's complex, not easy to understand Krishna. The theme of the Absolute Truth is not easy to understand. And that is explained in the scriptures. The Bhagavad Gita says it's not easy to understand. But when we don't have the proper understanding, then we have an improper understanding. So we have to be very careful when we understand things. So the demigods stay in the dark material world. They continue in the cycle of birth and death. And that is what is regretted here in this first verse. The focus is to elevate people to the highest goal. To elevate them to lower goals, that's not encouraged. So, what is the logic of demigod worship? What is the purpose of the Vedic literature to present demigod worship? The idea is to give the opportunity to people to be godly elevated. Because they are too degraded, they cannot be elevated directly to the higher plane of consciousness. So we can try to understand with an example. This is Krishna is a God who doesn't just welcome us back, but also strives multifariously to get us back. So Krishna wants us to get us back. And yes, and he makes arrangement for us to go back through the scriptures and so on. And one such effort is a system of demigod worship. So I remember when I was in my youth as a Christian, we have heard, and maybe you have also heard, the famous story of the prodigal son. A son squandered the wealth of his heritage. He became frustrated and decided to go back to his father. His father welcomed him happily. This story talks about the selflessness of God. That God's love is far greater and deeper than our love. One way he tries to get us back is demigod worship. So let's look at it. So this is from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. The great sage Yajnavalkya is asked the critical question, Kati Devahi, how many devas are there? His answer progresses from 3003. First he says 3003, then he says 303, and then he says 33, and then he says 6 and 3, and finally he said 1. And he answers if there is no and he answers that there is no contradiction in the various answers. So how to understand it? That it's like one king and many ministers. All the demigods are part of the same system. An arrangement is required to bring the conditioned soul healthy to pure devotional service. So we have here, let's try to understand this. So a son goes away and is exploited by some other lord. So the father sent his own minister to get him back. The father arranged to his minister. Gradually, the son becomes aware of the affection of his father and wants to come back home. Then his father welcomes him. And then is demigod worship good or bad? So the Vedic system of multi-level worship bears it bears testimony to 1, a unique concern for the individuality of the worshipper. 2, an unparalleled flexibility of the worshipper in making himself accessible. That's this point, we spoke about. Is it good or bad? That was our question. Demigod worship. So it is, what is it? It is an intermediate worship of a representative of the Supreme Lord. That's what it is. The demigods are representatives. So first there is a concern for the individuality of the worshipper. Every individual may not be ready to worship directly the Supreme Lord. First they have to accept the Supreme Lord. Otherwise you cannot worship him. You have to know him. Can you love someone you don't know? No, you must. That's the point. So if they accept one demigod as supreme and reject all others, then there is no way to advance. Therefore, demigod worship is an arrangement of the Lord to get individuals the opportunity to worship his representative. So Krishna accommodates the individuality of the worshipper So Krishna is making himself accessible to his ministers. By their worship they get elevated and get a higher understanding. The point here is, so this is interesting, is 60%, you get on an exam 60% score. Is it good or bad? For a capable person, scoring 40%, for one, for one capable of scoring 40% is excellent, but for one capable of scoring 80%, it's undesirable. So it's not the same, good or bad. So it's demigod worship, good or bad. For atheist and materialist, it's recommended. For serious spiritual seekers, it is to be discouraged. Do we get that point? So is worship good or bad? It depends on the level of the individual and the spiritual evolution. So the prince must go to serve the minister. So demigod worship keeps one in the cycle of birth and death. So Vallabhacharya was a worshipper of both Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu. One time he had great reversals in his life and went to a Shiva temple praying to Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva appeared before him and asked what he wanted. Vallabhacharya prayed, "Whatever is most dear to you, please give that to me." Lord Krishna smiled and said that Lord Krishna is my dearmost object of love. And Vallabhacharya became a devotee of Lord Krishna. So he was elevated to the devotional understanding. So sometimes demigod worship, it's an intermediate, it becomes an intermediate to go to Krishna. There is also the story of in Chaitanya Charitamrita, which you know certainly, that Keshav Kashmiri, he was a great worshipper of Saraswati Devi. Saraswati Devi gave Keshav Kashmir the benediction that no other scholar could defeat him. He went around defeating everyone else, and he had a victory sheet signed by all those whom he had defeated. So when Keshav Kashmiri came to Mayapur and he met Nimai Pandit defeated him, and Keshav Kashmiri was devastated. So Saraswati Devi said that I gave you the promise that you would be defeated, that you would not be defeated by any scholar from this world. But the person you met is not from this world. So is the Lord of my Lord, my Master is Krishna, Govindam Adi Purusham. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not different from Krishna. At that time, Keshava Kashmiri realized the truth and surrendered to Lord Chaitanya. This is another interesting story, the story of Chandidas. Chandidas was a great worshipper of Chandi, the goddess Chanti. So, through his worship he acquired a good amount of prosperity. His brother was a worshipper of Lord Vishnu, Krishna, and he had a Saligam Shila. Chandi, he had a big garden in which he would have cultivate flowers to worship Chandi. On a morning, the brother of Chandidas asked if he could take one flower from the garden to worship his Saligam Shila. Chandi said, "No, all the flowers are only meant for the worship of Chandi." So his brother felt bad, but respectfully went away. But Chandi's brother offered the flowers of Chandi's garden to his Salagam Shila with devotion within his mind. The whole garden, yeah. That once they were offered in the mind, they became prasad. So once they were, then Chandidas came and took the same flowers and offered them to Chandi. Then Chandi appeared to him and said, "I'm pleased with you. What do you want?" So Chandi was surprised and said, "I will ask a boon later." So Chandi was surprised. So how is it, he asked the goddess, "How is it that you are pleased with me? I've been worshipping you in the same way for so long." And Chandi said, "Today you have given me the prasad of the Lord of my Lord. That is why I'm pleased with you." Chandi asked, "What do you mean?" Then Chandi told him the story. Chandidas replied, "Do you mean worship of Vishnu is better than worshipping you?" Chandi replied, "Of course, my Lord is Shiva and his Lord is Vishnu. He is the Lord of my Lord." Chandidas said, "Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" Chandi said, the goddess said, "You never asked me this, so I gave you whatever you asked me for. Because today you gave me the prasad of my Lord, I gave you this revelation. Worshipping Vishnu is the ultimate goal of life." Eventually, Chandidas became a great Vaishnava. He wrote beautiful songs glorifying Lord Krishna and his pastimes. Still, he kept the name Chandidas as he considered Chandi Devi to be his guru, who showed him the way to Krishna. So he became a worshipper of Krishna. So worship of demigods is meant to be intermediate, not directly to Krishna. So demigod worship, it can work, but many demigod worshippers become mistaken in who is the supreme, and then they cannot be liberated from material existence. Of course, Krishna says in 9.25 of Bhagavad Gita, "Yanti devata devam pitrin yanti pratevata." Those who worship the demigods will take birth among those demigods, and those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings, and those who worship me will live with me. So Krishna is the ultimate destination, and Isopanisad focuses on that. The worshippers of demigods enter into darkness. That means they remain in this material world in the cycle of birth and death. They worship the temporary and stay in the darkness of material existence. They do not get elevated. So how is demigods worship talked about in Bhagavad Gita? That the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, also the 9th, but the 7th is quite critical. Yes. Kamaisaster rittahyan prapatyantena devata tam tam niyatamastaya prakataniyatasvaya. Those whose intelligence has been stolen, rittahyan, stolen, by material desires, surrender unto demigods and follow the practical rules of worship according to their nature. So the knowledge is abducted by material desires. Therefore they surrender to demigods, they worship the demigods according to the rules they like. Why does the prince leave the kingdom? Because of the desire for self-centered enjoyment. By that, one's intelligence is lost. In the 7th chapter, Lord Krishna describes those who have surrendered and those who are not surrendered to him. And then he speaks about these two extremes. 7.21, Lord Krishna makes demigod worshippers' faith study so that they can devote themselves to a particular demigod they are approaching. So Krishna gives them the faith, I want to worship this demigod, and gives them faith. So Lord Krishna gives faith because he wants the individual to come back to him. That's you have the story of the prodigal son, story of the prince. The father wants the son at least to come back to his kingdom. So the father, or king, knows that the son will be like the minister. Therefore Krishna, through the super soul, gives faith. So even the faith of persons worshipping the devas comes from Krishna. Then gradually the 40% will rise to the 60%. At 722, Bhagavad Gita. Equipped with this faith, they do archan, they worship, they get their desires fulfilled, but ultimately the fulfillment of their desires is arranged by Krishna. The ministers are getting everything from the king. All the demigods, whatever blessings they give, is due to the power given to them by Krishna. So different Puranas in different modes advise worship of a certain deity as supreme. So then 723, the fruits they get are temporary, and therefore they are less intelligent because they could get the eternal. By putting the same energy in their worship, they could worship the Supreme Lord. Then they can go to him instead of the demigods. It leads to different destinations. For the prince to come back to the father, the prince's intelligence has to awake that he again understands that he is the son of the king. They go to Svargaloka and then they have to come back again to this material world. So again, up and down, Brahmanda Brahmate Konya Bhagavanti. Brahmanda Brahmate. The worshipper of the devas, or as Sambudhi, they stay in this material world in darkness. And that's the first part of the 12th mantra. That's the second part. So we will speak about Mayavadis and Brahmavadis, try to understand that Brahmavadis, their progress is slow, and troublesome. They do not know the personal form of the Lord. They are attracted to the formless Brahman, Klesha. It's a difficult process. So they don't know the supreme, the transcendental form of the Lord. They don't say that he doesn't exist. They don't say Krishna is Maya. It's just they don't know that Mayabhas are different. Krishna in 9:11, I think, Avachanti Mamati Manusham Tan Mashrita. But they don't, so they Avachanti Mamadam, Manusham Tan Mashrita, they think Krishna an ordinary human being, body made of material nature. That and what is the result they get? The result of the Brahmavadis was that they get a very difficult process. But the Mayavadis result is Moksha Moksha, that whatever they want to achieve, everything will be baffled, they don't get it. So in personalism, in the scriptures, is transitional, not final. So we go upwards, elevation, so we have the Vedas, and then from the Vedas we hear about the Upanishads, especially the impersonal form of the feature of the Lord. And then we come to the Bhagavatam. But you have also in the scriptures the karma kandis, which is supposed to lead to jnana kanda, and jnana kandi to bhakti. So we'll explain that. So first the karma kandis, that's the lowest, which is described in the scriptures. So we remember from last time what is karma kandi? Karma kandi is the scriptures which explains how to enjoy piously in this material world. That piously, so that one gets sukarma, good results, and does not have to suffer. That these karma kandas, they have faith in the scriptures, and gradually they come to goodness, to the mood of goodness. But the Upanishads, they are also transitional. They take the practitioner from the material form to the spiritual form. They take them from the negative to the positive, the Upanishads. It is a transitional teaching. But everything what is material is negated. And in conclusion, the Upanishads teach spiritual form and leads one to the Bhagavatam, and the Bhagavatam leads one to Bhakti. So that's the upwards elevation from Karma Kanda to Jnana Kanda to Bhakti. Karma Kanda is trying to enjoy according to the scriptures, following the scriptures to get enjoyment. And then that will purify one after a long time, and then one wants to know who I am. Then they go to Jnana Karma Kanda and try to understand the difference between matter and spirit. They study the Upanishads and so on. And then they come to the conclusion, yes, of I'm a spirit soul and I'm a servant of Krishna. They come to Bhakti. So it's a gradual. So this Karma Kanda, the Jnana Kanda, is also transitional and leads to Bhakti. So there's a lot to say about Mayavadi, I think I explained that. I think it's important we know these things. It takes some time, but we have not so much time, but I will explain you the essence of the misunderstanding of Mayavad philosophy. So the Mayavadis, they say, yes, there is, they say in actual reality, and they call this Paramartika, the transcendental realm, that's the actual reality. They say there is no form, there is no variety, there is only consciousness, Brahman. That is what they say. So scripture speaks about a relationship, a reciprocation, and devotees who worship God. So they divide the scriptures in two parts. But of course, this division, that's not in the scriptures. But they do that. They divide it in two parts. They say there's a lower and a higher level of reality. And most of scripture is lower reality, they say. And their Mahavakya, what they always state is Aham Brahmasmi. They say that these statements are the higher reality and everything else is a lower or not actual reality. It is a system which is by which all troublesome statements of scriptures we are against their philosophy are rejected to a lower level. So everything what is against the Mayavadi philosophy, they say it's a lower level. That by that they get rid of it. So why Sankaracharya had to teach this? Because Buddhism had spread all over the country and people had to be brought back to the Vedic fold. So why did Sankaracharya teach this? Because Buddhism was taking over. Before there was the worship of the Vedas, people believed in the Vedas, followed the Vedas, but they started to use the Vedas for their sense gratification and perform animal sacrifices just to eat flesh. And then Buddha came and said, no, this Vedas is nonsense, you follow ahimsa, these are the 8 rules you have to follow, and out of these Vedas, and they were under the strength of Ashoka, a great emperor, they became all Buddhist. But then Sankaracharya came and said no, that he re-established the Vedas, but also in a transitional way. He said it's impersonal, and by that, yes, he brought them back to the Vedic fold, to the Vedas, but with the Mayavada misunderstanding. So people started in the beginning why they rejected the Vedas, because they started to misuse this karma kanda, to engage in animal killing and doing jahyas. Then Buddha came. Because of the violence, he rejected the Vedas. They said, don't bother. He said, don't bother about God, you cannot know. Just practice morality, right conduct, right speech, ahimsa. So he brought people to goodness. What's kind of state of pre-religion. So in Buddhism there was caste consciousness. Buddhists wrote books that criticized the people. So we cannot speak about higher realities or lower realities in the scriptures. That cannot be done. So to get people in the Vedic fold, the Lord sent Sankaracharya, and Sankara could not give the complete conclusion. So it changed the name Sunya, void, become Brahman. So his purpose historically was to check Buddhism. Shiva tells Parvati that in Kali Yuga, Lord Shiva will appear to spread Mayavadi philosophy. Sankaracharya is Lord Shiva. Both Buddhism and Mayavadi philosophy focus on the void, the transition, and it became a disastrous blending. It allowed people to say that they are God, everyone is Brahman. This is the ultimate glorification of the false ego, I'm God. So this is different from the impersonal conclusion. So there is a historical master plan by the Lord. So first there was Buddhism, which is basically Sunyavadi, become zero. There is no soul at the end. Everything is finished, you become zero. And Sankaracharya brought it back into the Vedas and said everything is one Brahman. And And then Ramanuja came. Ramanujacharya, which is Visist Advaita, purified Advaita. Advaita is oneness. Visist Advaita is purified. And he counteracted all the arguments of Sankaracharya. And he said there is a clear relationship with the Supreme Lord. But that's very complex, this Visist Advaita. But so Ramanuja said, yes, everything is one, but also different at the same time. That's what Lord Chaitanya came to establish. Ashintya Veda Veda Tattva. We are one in quality, but not in quantity. That is, yeah. So there are scriptural contradictions. A lot to say about that. But this history of the Mayavadis is quite long. We don't have the time, but I've given you the essence that, yes, this is all, yeah, Mayavadi is a deviant and transitional teaching. Why? It extracts impersonalism from the Upanishads. But it's difficult to do that from the Sri Isopanisad, because Sri Isopanisad points directly to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's much more to say about that, but we don't have the time, and we will go to the next verse. Next verse is 13. Share the screen. We have 13 on the screen. Well, can someone bring some water? 13. Anya evau sambhavat, anyu au asambhavat, itis sroma dhiranam, yenas tat vishakshire. It is said that one result is obtained by worshipping the supreme cause of all causes, and another result is obtained by worshipping what is not supreme. All this is heard from the undisturbed authorities who clearly explained it. So one result of worshipping Supreme, another result of not worshipping the Supreme. Here we have an overview, Srila Prabhupada, which we will discuss on 13. But okay. So that begins. Do all paths lead to the same goal? The question is not whether the Absolute is limited or unlimited, but whether one has to follow a particular path to reach the Absolute Truth, or can choose whatever path. So one needs to develop one's consciousness in a particular way so that he can come closer to the Absolute Truth. Srila Prabhupada said, if whatever we can do can bring us back to Godhead, if whatever we can do brings us back to Godhead, then why did Lord Krishna speak Bhagavad Gita? That's what Srila Prabhupada makes that point. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, so 1858 of Bhagavad Gita, that Machita Sarvadurani Mat Prasada Trishati Atasit Vamankram Nasushasi Vanaksati. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act to false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So that's the same thing. If you do this, you have that result, and if you do that, you have another result, Krishna says here. The same thing. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles. If you don't do that, you will be lost. So Krishna gives two parts in this verse and two consequences. So the absolute truth is perceived at the transcendental level of consciousness. Otherwise, transcendental reality will remain inaccessible. So we must be on the transcendental level to perceive the absolute truth. The reality is that different paths are bringing us to different levels of consciousness. And not all levels of consciousness can perceive the absolute truth. So Lord Krishna is a person, and we need to approach him as a person. So this is scriptural refutation of all paths lead to the same goal. So, of course, we have this verse itself is a reputation. And verse 10 was also in Isopanisad, was also a refutation. It says, if avidya will lead to one result, and vidya will lead to another result. Text 10. So Isopanisad is clear on that. Not all path leads to the same goal. Yes. Also in 3, 31 and 32 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells what's happening when you have faith in the Lord and not faith in the Lord. So there we have it again in Bhagavad Gita, 3:31. Yeah. So those who execute their duties according to my injunctions and follow this teaching faithfully, without envy, become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. And then 32, in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. But those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. So here Krishna is very clear in that. There are other passages, like in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 39 and 40, at the end he says nearly the same thing. 39, the last verses. A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge. And having achieved it, he quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. But in the next verse, the last verse of the 4th chapter, but ignorance and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness, they fall down. For the doubting soul there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. Of course, then Krishna says in 9:25, when he speaks about demigod worship, Yanti devata devam pitri yanti pitri fataham bhutani yanti bhuti yanti mam yachinopimam. One who worships the devas goes to the devatas. Those in the mode of passion worship the ancestors. And those who go to the ancestors, and those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors, and those who in the mode of ignorance worship Buddha, the Buddhas go to the Buddhas. And those who worship me, they come to me. So in this verse, Krishna gives 4 different paths one can follow, and different destinations, different goals. Not all paths lead to the same goal. The cause of this idea is that all paths lead to the same goal. That's that is a desire to water down the complexity of the truth. It's false. But yeah. So yes, it leads to misunderstanding. We cannot make things artificially simplistic. In 4:11, the verse Jea Tama Babachite Tamstete, the Deva Bajamham, Mama Vartmana Vartate Manusha, Varta Sarvasa. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respect, O Prita. So this verse says that all people are on my path, but not that all paths lead to the same goal. That's not what is said here. So the principle explained in this verse is that Lord Krishna is reciprocal. If someone surrenders to him, he reciprocates. But the Mayavadis emphasize the second part of the verse. Mama Vartmana Vartante. Everyone is on my Mama Vartmana, on my path. So Lord Krishna does not say that people following all different paths, they come to me. No, he doesn't say that. So different peoples are attracted to different things. Attraction to Krishna leads to Krishna. Attraction to alcohol brings one away from Krishna. Alcohol is a spark of Krishna, yes. The spark of Krishna. That everything is a fragment of myself, Krishna says. I pervade the whole universe. But we should not become attracted to the spark, but to Krishna. So all paths lead to the same goal we discussed. Now 3 different paths. We see that so exclusivism, inclusivism, and pluralism. Pluralism, yeah, all paths are right. Exclusivism, my way is the only way. Inclusivism, there is one way with various levels. So some paths claim that they have exclusively rights to God. You can only go back to Godhead if you follow my path. So Srila Prabhupada was once in America here, and there was a debate, and they were on television. And there was a Christian priest, and there was Srila Prabhupada. And first the man addressed Prabhupada and said, "The Prabhupada, this priest here, is a follower of Jesus Christ. He believes in the Bible. According to you, can he attain perfection?" And Srila Prabhupada said, "Yes, if his religious process leads him to develop love of God, then he can attain perfection." And then the man turned to the Christian priest and said, "This is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, and he believes in the Bhagavad Gita. According to you, can he reach perfection?" And the man said, and the priest said, "No, Jesus is the only path. So that's my way is the only right way, exclusivism." That's pluralism says, of course, that exclusivism, that's typical for Judeo-Christian, for all Judeo-Christianity inspired religions. They are based on this narrow-mindedness. This is the idea that ours is the only way to God. And as a reaction, people go to the other extreme, to the pluralism. Pluralism, all paths are right. Now there are many cultures in most Western countries. Before it was mainly Christianity. Now it has become multicultural. The idea that only path is right is culturally alienating and a cause of conflict. So to avoid conflicts, they say that your part is right, my part is right. There are as many religions as human beings, no problem. So this is quite appealing to the broad-mindedness of the people. If all parts are right, then also atheism is right. So logically, all paths are right, it will not work. If one is in a diseased condition, then there are different kinds of treatment that one can try out. But some of the treatments will not work, but will aggravate the disease and are not healthy. So the objective criteria whether the treatment improves the health of the patient remains crucial. So there is an objective criteria whether the person develops love of God, that then inclusivism, there is one way with various levels on it. So there is one path, but people are going up or down. That's inclusivism. So our goal is not, Srila Prabhupada said, our goal is not to convert from one religion to another, but from materialism to spirituality. That is the goal. The path that let that happen, that path we accept. This criteria is important. If that is considered, then they confuse. If that principle is not considered, then they confuse sickness with health. So on the social cultural point of view, there are many paths, but that is not based on scripture, but there are objective criteria to improve health. So we have, okay. So it is finally the criteria. What we have here. Okay, that's another thing, we come to that. So our philosophical difference should not affect our behavior, so that it is unproductive for outrage. So Mayavadi theory is detrimental for everyone. The impersonal idea that we need to see the consequences of everyone. You need the concept of a personal God to make spiritual advancement. So Prahlad praised the Lord Nrsimhadev and expressed how he feels compassion for all the fools and rascals who are attracted by Maya. This verse. So there are a minority of convinced Mayavadis who misuse the scriptures to prove they are right. However, there are many who are not so convinced but are influenced by the Mayavadi philosophy. So strong people is not that we drive people away from Krishna. If someone asks you, what do you think about this person, then ask, what is his philosophy? Don't attack the person. We need to build a bridge and give them faith in Krishna. If we speak insensitive, then we break the bridge. Most people are under Mayavadi influence, and they are not Mayavadis. That's also interesting. So, yes, this Manava Seva, that's another point. Manava Seva of Madhava Seva, service to humans, to humanity, or service to God? That's the question here. So some people argue, they criticize us. Why not use the money used for the temple for worship of the poor people who are starving? So that became popular in India. I'm not going to say which political party, but anyway, they came up with that point: close all these temples and feed the poor people. So poor people should be fed, but this is the cause of their starvation that we spend money for the temple? Because we worship Krishna, they are starving. Beggars are starving everywhere. So why emotionally manipulate people by contrasting the opulence in the temple with the beggars outside the temple? Why not contrast the starvation of the temple with the thousands of dollars spent on cricket, on movies, and on so many frivolous events? So, if all the money spent in the United States and the European Union on perfume is used for feeding people, then there will be no starvation. Interesting. Why not contrast in that way? A different contrast. This contrast is very uncomfortable for us as it interferes with our sense gratification. The contrast with the temple and poor people makes us feel superior to those in the temple. In addition, it exempts us from going to the temple worship. It is manipulating the motives of people against the people of God. At the fact speed. Nearly 1/4 of our people, 1.3 million, a majority of humanity, live on less than $1 a day, while the world's 358 billionaires have assets exceeding the combined annual incomes of countries with 45% of the world's people. Mind-boggling. A study of famines in Africa showed that on every occasion the affected nation had within its own boundaries the food resources to feed its starving citizens, but relief was intentionally withheld due to economic or political motives. Greed causes starvation. When people become godless, they concomitantly become materialistic and greedy, and exploit nature and their fellow humans for their selfish enjoyment. We may feed a few hungry people, but until we remove the greed from wealthy people's hearts, hunger will continue to torment millions. When people are offered spiritual education and experience, they understand that their real happiness is loving God, not in material things. But yeah, this is Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa was asked, "What is the secret of compassion?" She pointed out our rosary beads and said, "By praying, if I feel love for God and all His children, so I want to help them as much as I can." So, if you give money to a beggar, do you know what he will do with it? If a person with a venereal disease is cured, what will he do afterwards? If you offer free treatment to an alcoholic, do you know what he will do after being cured? Social service. So, serving Krishna or serving the people. So, social service with Yukta Vairagya. Attract people to Krishna through it. Yeah. Material welfare is not unimportant. Prithu Maharaj did a lot. Primary Kshatriya responsibility is to provide material welfare. The Brahman's responsibility to provide spiritual welfare. Srila Prabhupada wanted Varnashram, then everyone is taken care of. The Brahmins give education, free education for everyone. The Kshatriyas protect everyone. The Vaishyas feed everyone and give them what they need. So, no worries. That's Varnashram. That's included. So this is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, who criticized the Grihasthas who didn't give charity to the temple. He said, if married men think I must not give any money, which I consider reserved for Krishna, to the poor and deprived, then they are really showing symptoms of wretchedness, cruelty, and lack of compassion for others. They should not consider that charity to the poor is a fruitive activity. This kind of mentality will make their hearts hard, and they will suffer from greed. Anyway, we will come due to time restraint. We have to be careful, but the best Manava Seva is to connect Manava to Madhav and to make Madhav accessible to Manava. That means the best service to mankind is to give them Krishna consciousness. And by that people get access to Krishna, to Madhav. That's the best social service. Good. We go one further. That's the next one. So, Queen 14. Isopanisad. I will read the verse. That's the third verse. Verse 14 of this tree. Again about Sambhuti. Mantra 14. Sambhutim savinasham cha yastat vedo bhayam sa vinashena mityam tirtva sambhutyamritamasnute. One should know perfectly the personality of God Sri Krishna and his transcendental name, form, qualities and pastimes, as well as the temporary material creation with its temporary demigods, men and animals. When one knows these, he surpasses death and the ephemeral cosmic manifestation with it. And in the eternal kingdom of God, he enjoys his eternal bliss, life of bliss and knowledge. We'll find that also in Bhagavad Gita, that same principle. One must know what's binding and what's not binding, what's action prescribed by the scriptures, and what's against the scriptures. That one must know what's spiritual and material. That's a theme that comes back. 14, where we have here the overview. So, Vinashena in this world means nothing in this world can make this world deathless. So this world is temporary, and science cannot change the nature of the world. Is there a realm beyond this material sphere? Yes, the Vedas give us information about a deathless realm, as well as the worlds of death, both. But as Krishna says about it with this world in 8.15 of Bhagavad Gita, dukkha laya shashvatam. It is full of misery and temporary. So then one must give up one's misconceptions. About the conception of time, Krishna says in 11.32, time I'm the destroyer of the world. So we go to 6 transformations: the living, birth, growth, maintenance, reproduction, deterioration and death, and the non-living, creation, deterioration and destruction. So this is a linear model. So before we had the belief that the sun moved around the earth. Later Copernicus got his first telescope, and he gave evidence that the earth moves around the sun. So religion and science, especially in the West, have been in conflict for the last 400 years. But both ideas are linear. Everything moves to the time of the appearance of Jesus, and then everything moves toward the returning for the Messiah. That's Christianity. Even in Europe, the model was cyclic. The morning and afternoon, night seasons, the linear view of time was a Christian idea. And science adopted it, replacing God and Jesus by nature. It is a self-serving model of evolution. It is a model where we post ourselves on the top. The current state of humanity is not at the top, but at the bottom. So this is this linear approach. But the Vedic model is different. It's cyclic. It says, yes, creation, maintenance, annihilation, creation, maintenance, annihilation. It continues like that. It's cyclic. But is there a way out of the cycle? So after the morning there is going to be night and darkness. So this model does not make room for human progress. But the Vedic model gives a way to progress. But that is not material progress, it's spiritual progress. The progress getting out of the wheel of influence of time. So we have more developed intelligence. We want to improve our situation. So the last 5 centuries we have seen scientific progress at a feverish pace. That cannot be denied. The human intelligence has been used just to go around in a wheel of time and not to get out of it. We have stressed people. Psychologically, we have regressed. It has created an imbalance. I was on the airplane when I flew from Charlotte to New York, and a lady came to me and she said, I'm too stressed out, I need a retreat. You are a monk, can you tell me where I can go for a retreat? I gave her a few addresses. But people are stressed out. So progress at the spiritual level means increasing our understanding of philosophy, our philosophical understanding about the spiritual reality. Do whatever is required for the maintenance of the body and try to understand the spiritual reality. Now, yes, I have a whole presentation on time, but it's too much to go through. But I'll show you the slides. There's a whole calculation of Brahma's day. It's for Brahma, the time. Age of the earth, calculated scientifically. Age of the universe. That this is an interview with Brahma. That's interesting. Question to Brahma. Oh Brahmaji, I heard that your 1 second is ours 100,000 years. And Brahma replied, yes, son. Question to Brahma. And that your $1 is for us $100,000. Brahma replied, exactly. Question to Brahma. Can I have your $1, please? Brahma said, yes, wait a second, my child. Anyway, that's... So, we go to the conclusion. Let's see. Yeah. So we cannot avoid problems in this world. A person has a car and gets an accident, and the person screams and is beating that person. But the car has only a few scratches. But because of attachment becomes a whole problem. For the devotee, if the car is completely crushed, then there is attachment to give up the body. For the devotee, if the car is completely crushed, then there is attachment to give up the body. Yeah, if the body becomes a problem, then we want to give it up. As I become detached from the body, then my emotional involvement diminishes. A devotee is absorbed in thoughts of the Lord. Therefore, suffering for the body is much less inconvenient for a devotee than for a materialist. So these are, for a materialistic person, nothing is known about the future. It's fearful. But a devotee knows the future. A devotee prays to Krishna, please take me out of this samsara. I remember Sridhar Swami was in Canada here. He had this liver problem. He was going to leave his body, and finally he went to Mayapur. I was there when he arrived. To spend his last days in Mayapur was at the time of the installation of the Panchatattva. There were thousands of devotees waiting for him when he arrived. And they brought him, he was lying on his bed, and he was fallen unconscious for some time. And due to the disease, he had a big belly. And when he came to consciousness, the doctor came, and he was with his stethoscope on his belly. And Sridhar Swami said to the doctor, is it a boy or a girl? And everyone started to laugh. He was not really attached to the body or his situation. But anyway, all these desires were fulfilled. He wanted to reach Mayapur Dham. He wanted to be there for the installation of the Panchatattva and for Gar Purnim. And all three were fulfilled. 1 or 2 days after Karpanim, he left this world. So this death is not so important for devotees, in the sense they of course, the consciousness at the time of death, they are Krishna conscious, then they are not so attached to the body, happy to let it go. So many devotees end their life in remembering Krishna. So this is the first part of today. We will stop here and have 5-10 minutes for questions. Any questions? No? Okay, yes.
I want to ask actually a few things, but maybe I'll ask one to he has a question. So in regards to the demigods, that was the first topic.
Yeah.
We don't worship demigods, but at the same time, we worship some demigods, like for example Lord Shiva. And my question is, to what extent the demigods they are part of the life of a devotee?
Yeah, to what extent are demigods part of the life of devotee? First, demigods are also devotees, that we respect them, that they have still some desire to enjoy, to control. Therefore Krishna engages them, and that so we see sometimes in Krishna book also the Vrajavas is worshipping the demigods. But they do it with right knowledge. They know that Krishna is supreme. So we need to have that knowledge. The gopis, they worship Katyayani because they wanted Krishna as their husband. That was their purpose. They always to get Krishna's favor. You see also Rukmini, before the marriage, she was going to Durga and offering flowers and prayers. That because she was praying to the Lord's energy for to marry Krishna. That's with the right understanding. But Srila Prabhupada says there's no need to worship the demigods. It's like bribing an agent. At the same time, we offer respect to the demigods. That we may go into a demigod temple and offer them respect, but with the understanding Krishna is supreme, not to worship them. That's something else, to give respect. To give respect. So that is, yes, that there are many other stories. Arjuna, who in Dwarka, who promised his Brahman that he will protect his children, because every time a child would take birth, it would die. So the Brahman went to Ugrasena and said, "Are you king? That such a thing can happen in your kingdom must be due to bad government, impious government." And Arjuna, I think, so many children had already died, 7, 8 or 9, I don't exactly remember. But Arjuna said, "I will protect you." But then when he was there with his bow, but he could not prevent the death of the next child. And then he had promised to enter the fire. But the thing is, before he went to the Brahm's house to protect the child, he had asked the empowerment of Lord Shiva and not Lord Krishna. So then afterwards he was thinking, he had promised to enter the fire. He was going to enter the fire, but Krishna stopped him. Okay, that we will get his sons back. And then he went with him to Mahavishnu, because Mahavishnu had taken them away. There's a whole story in Krishna book. So that shows that better not to pray for power and blessings from the demigods, but get their blessings to serve Krishna nicely. And, yes. So one of the devotees may have been a sannyasi, or I don't know, but he said, yes, we want to do business and get a lot of money to use to support our temple. Can we worship Ganesh? Srila Prabhupada replied, he said something like, the exact figure I don't know, but he said, you can worship Ganesh, but if you give me at least $100,000 a month. I was joking. Anyway, does that help? Something else? Yeah.
I was wondering, I wanted to ask about mantra 14 when it says, when one knows he's talking about knowing what is spiritual and material, then he surpasses death and ephemeral cause manifestation with it. So I wanted to ask why it's necessary for us to understand what is material and what is spiritual, to have a balanced program to understand both.
Yeah, and that's important because materially we have to maintain the body, so many things. Spiritually we have to have sadhana. So if you don't maintain yourself materially and you become sick, can you do sadhana? No, you must have both. That's practical, but on the level of knowledge, we must know what's binding in this world and what's liberating. And therefore, you need to know the material. If you use things materially for your own sense gratification, you become entangled in matter. So you have to know both. How you become entangled, the material side, and how do you get out the spiritual side. We need both knowledge in this world. Otherwise, it's not possible to get liberation. You have to spiritualize our material activities. Does that help? Good. So we can stop 5 minutes, 11:30. Well, let's say 10. 24:12, we come back. Good.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
My question, we will resume. So we are entering the last section of the Isopanisad, mantra 15 to 18. Mantra 15. Okay, ready? So mantra 15 to 18 is the last section of the Isopanisad. In this section, a spiritual seeker is praying to the Lord. He's asking, please take away your effulgence so that I can know you. And please, especially at the time of death, remember all the sacrifices I've done for you. And reveal yourself to me. Let me know yourself. So, of course, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 7:25, Nam prakasha sarvasya sammaya samavrita. So do not reveal myself to everyone. I'm covered by my Maya. But this Maya is two aspects. For us, we don't see Krishna in this world because everything is covered by matter, material energy. But even if that material energy is taken away, still there is also the spiritual Maya, the Brahman effulgence, by which we cannot know Krishna. We must also transcend Brahman realization, and then we can know Krishna, go beyond it. And that's the theme of this mantras from 15 to 18. And 15, this mantra is quoted many times by Srila Prabhupada in his lectures, especially to show that the Brahman effulgence is effulgence of Krishna's spiritual body. That effulgence is Brahman. Krishna says, Brahmanoi Pratishtanam, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. This Brahman depends on me. And here in the Upanishad is said is Krishna's effulgence. So that's the theme we are entering for these last verses. So, Iranmayena patrena satyasya vitam mukam tatvam pusham apavrino satya dharmaya dristaye. O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. So this dazzling effulgence is called the Brahma Jyoti. Yes, so that's the whole overview of the Isopanisad. And we are going to the last part, prayers to Ishvara to reveal himself. So 15 and 16, take me beyond the white light of the Supreme Person, the Brahma Jyoti. And 17, 18, take away all the obstacles of my conditioned life so that I can come to you. So this is what it is about. And so mantra 15 is a prayer for mercy of the Lord. The spiritual seeker wants to see the spiritual form of the Lord. So this verse shows, he wants to see the personal form, this verse shows that the personal aspect of the absolute is higher than the impersonal Brahman, very clearly. So we here come to that. First, some other points. So the dazzling effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not the supreme reality. It is a personal form having a face and so on. That now we come to the overview. 10 paragraphs. The first part, Krishna speaks about Pushan, and that Krishna is the basis of Brahman and Paramatma. Satya Dharmaya Drishtaye, how Krishna reveals himself beyond Brahman. And then 6 to 10, how the ultimate revelation of Bhagavan comes only by bhakti. So that's Srila Prabhupada's structure of his purport. So normally we refer to the word Pushan as one who provides light, air, water and so on. But Srila Prabhupada here takes it deeper. He makes a point that Krishna is the source of Brahman. Brahman is the ultimate realizations. So in the Vedas we have a process of ultimate revelation. Sankhya looked at as matter, absolute truth as matter, and Sankhya describes the elements of the world, everything that from the whole creation is described in Sankhya. And Jnana focuses on the potencies of the Lord, Brahman. But it's only one aspect of the absolute truth, the Sat aspect. And then yoga looks at the absolute truth with only material potencies. It comes to Paramatma realization in the heart, and they realize that Paramatma controls material nature. But so they understand that the absolute truth is eternal, but they have some knowledge, not much. It's not complete. Because they don't understand mostly these yogis, that this Paramatma is an expansion of Bhagavan, therefore they stay in the material world. And then by bhakti is the absolute truth with material and spiritual potencies. One must know both, again, material and spiritual, to know the absolute truth. And that's Bhagavan, Satchitananda. So Srila Prabhupada describes how Bhagavan is the ultimate revelation of everything. Sankhya and Jnana is slightly related, but they are different. Sankhya refers to counting. In Sankhya, the spiritual seeker starts analyzing the world around and starts thinking, what is the material world made out? And he's asking that, yes, what is the source of it? It moves to fundamental element. So we see when we have a puri is made of atta, the flour, and oil, right? Mainly atta and flour. That when it is cooked, then we become attracted to it. That if we go back to the ingredients, then we will not so become attracted. So the seeker tries to look beyond. There is a variety of elements: earth, water, fire. If we look deeper, then we become detached from the good-looking appearances. So when Sankhya rises further, then we go to seek to the spiritual beyond the material. And then one comes to Jnana. Where is that all coming from? Then Jnana, by reasoning, one goes beyond matter and comes to spirit. Then one realizes that the Absolute Truth is the eternal spirit. And one realizes that the Absolute Truth is, one realizes the Sat aspect of the Absolute Truth. It's eternal. Spirit is eternal. So later then one sees that the Absolute Truth controls material nature, and then one starts to see the Sat Chit aspect of the Paramatma in the heart. When one sees a Puri, then there is a perception of the fragrance and the sight. So they have the fragrance and the sight, but the taste is the Bhagavan aspect. So on the Jnani sees the Absolute Truth without potencies. When we use the word pure consciousness, we mean that this consciousness is without lust, anger, greed, and so on. But impersonalists mean that with pure consciousness that there is only consciousness. That we are the observer, and there is the act of observation. There is subject, relation, and object. The stream of consciousness flows from the subject to the object. For the impersonalist, there is no subject or object. There is only pure consciousness. So consciousness alone does not explain where illusion is coming from. If there is no subject or object of consciousness, then there is nothing to be conscious of. It is only abstract visualization, that's all. When there is an object and subject, then there is no flow of consciousness. When there is no object and subject, there is no flow of consciousness. Flow of consciousness means action, otherwise there is no action. Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan is one way of analyzing. Through the path of Jnana, one come to Brahman realization. But through the path of yoga, one can come to Paramatma realization. With Jnana, one gains an understanding of the spiritual, but cannot realize its taste. So the Paramatma is governing principle, an overseer of Bhagavad Gita. And is overseer, that's mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 13:23. Upadrastanamanta bhakta bhaktamashva paramet sapyukte desmin purushapra. Yet in this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the Supreme Proprietor, who exists and oversees as overseer and permitter, and who is known as the Supersoul. So only Paramatma is Desmin Purushapara, or transcendental to this world. That the spirit soul is entangled in this world. For the Supersoul, to function as the controller of the material energy requires enormous potencies. So the powers of Indra are insignificant compared to the potency of Paramatma. The conception of the spiritual world is not there. Now the understanding is that there is not just consciousness that is impure, but there is understanding that it is apart from contaminated consciousness. There is a supreme consciousness that oversees the material world. Krishna is interacting with the gopis. There is spiritual reciprocation between object and subject, and that is not understood via yoga. The yogis perceive those whose end is not known by anyone. So that is absolute truth that is perceived by yogas to Jnana meditation, this Paramatma. At the level of Bhagavan realization, one focuses on the absolute truth as a transcendental personality with material and spiritual potencies. Bhagavan is only perceived by bhakti. So Krishna is the supreme being, and he has material and spiritual potencies. That's one of the spiritual potencies is Ladini Sakti, the pleasure-giving potency. There are two functions: to experience spiritual joy, and it nourishes the devotees. So that is, there is Satchit Ananda here, Ananda, bliss. Ladini Sakti allows Krishna to reciprocate in love. That is the spiritual pleasure-giving potency. Ladini Sakti. Mother Yasoda, by Yoga Maya, is able to forget that Krishna is God. So that's interesting. In the material world, we forget that Krishna is God by the material energy, and we put ourselves in the center. In the spiritual world, everyone remembers Krishna or Narayan, but in the spiritual world, they don't forget Krishna, but they forget that Krishna is God. By the Yoga Maya, by the spiritual energy, the different energy. Mother Yasoda, by Yoga Maya, is able to forget Krishna is God. How can someone being a courageous coward? It does not make sense. Maya disconnects us from Krishna, but Yoga Maya is a divine energy that increases the yoga, that increases the connection. It enables the devotee to feel greater and greater attraction for Krishna. When the Lord covers his potency and then acts as a child, then the devotees can relish parental rasa. So the Lord covers their consciousness with Yoga Maya to enhance their devotion for Krishna. They want to see Krishna as their child. The Yoga Maya makes them think you are the father or mother of Krishna. On this, that's with Mother Yasoda, that was the case. And by that, they can serve Krishna with more love. So we are all servants, but a friend is a more intimate servant. And a mother and father is even a more intimate servant. And the most intimate and the most intense love is conjugal love, Madhurya Rasa. So when the Lord covers his potency and then acts as a child, then the devotees relish parental rasa. Understanding parental rasa, parental relationship. Understanding how the Lord has spiritual energies and spiritual activities are experienced within these spiritual energies. How can one forget that Krishna is God through illusion, but Yasoda Maya is under a Maya that increases yoga? She tells Krishna that stealing is bad. He will get a bad reputation and therefore I need to discipline him. So this is Bhagavan realization. So here we have Sankhya. First on the board you have Sankhya. So in the Bhagavad Gita 7.4, Krishna explains Bhumarapanalabar Kamana Buddha Sankara Ityami Bina Bhagati Astata, earth, air, ether, water, earth, air, ether, water, sky, mind, intelligence, false ego. 8 separate energies. And then Krishna says that besides these 8 energies, there are higher energies, the spiritual energies, which comprise the living entities. But it describes these material energies, these 8 separate material energies. So the material energy is not an independent reality. It are Krishna's energies. That often this context of analyzing all the elements is done in a non-theistic concept, but that's wrong. Many scientists, they see material nature and see a connection with a supreme creator. So Krishna takes the Sankhya framework and explains how it has to be seen in a theistic framework. In this way, the perception of material energy can lead to bhakti. Our jnana leads to Bhagavan. So when a person is truly jnanavan, full of knowledge, he comes to understand Bhagavan. Then the person surrenders unto me. Bhaunam Jnanamati Jnanamam Mapavachde Vaseva Sarvamiti Samatma Sudurlabha. 719, I think. That 719. So then one starts to understand this point. That's where the jnani that goes to the next level of understanding. So then the person surrenders unto be. That such Mahatma, someone who does that, is very rare. The process of jnana, one sees the Absolute Truth as Brahman, but by the grace of the Absolute, one understands that the source of Brahman is Krishna. So the Atmaramas become attracted to Krishna. Those who are becoming jnanis and become liberated, they become attracted to Krishna. What is an Atmaram? That we will learn in the Bhagavatam 117. Atmarama Samuneyi Nijanta Apyo Krama Kravantait Kim Bhaktim Itam Buddha Gano Ari. All different varieties of Atmarams, those who have taken pleasure in the Atma, or spirit self, especially those established in the power of self-realization, thou freed from all kinds of material bondage, desire to render devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls. So that we have Sukadev Goswami was such a jnani who was liberated that, he didn't want to come out of the womb of his mother. And he stayed there for 16 years. Krishna had to come to talk to him, to promise him, when you take birth, you will remain liberated. But, and after 16 years, was there one painful birth, 16 years, he came out of the womb and ran to the forest. And his father was walking after him and calling out, my son, but only the echo of the trees came back. But then Vyasadeva made a plan to get him back into the ashram. And he sent out disciples to the forest to chant verses describing Krishna from the Bhagavatam. And many verses, like Tavagatam Ritam Tapta Jivanam Kavritidam Kalmasabham Shravnasya Shrimata Tatam Bhuihenati Bhuvidakyana. That is this verse from the Gita Gopi where they sing the most magnanimous person in this world is one who spreads the narrations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Is Bhujan, the most merciful. So they chanted many of these verses, and when Sukadeva Goswami heard these verses, he became attracted. So, like you have a cage and you have a canary bird inside, the canary bird has left the cage. The cage is open. How do you get it back into the cage? So every day you put a little seeds and put it from a distance of the cage. And the bird comes and takes the seeds and go away. And every day you put a little closer to the cage. And the last day you put it in the cage and the bird goes into the cage, you close it. Anyway, that's some practical advice. But so these students chanted all these verses of the Bhagavatam about Krishna, and every day a little closer to the ashram. And finally, in that way, Sukadeva Goswami was strict and was in the ashram, and then Vyasadeva recited for him the whole Bhagavatam, and he immediately remembered every verse, and later spoke it to Maharaj Pariksit. That's the Bhagavatam. He was an Atmaram. So when there is a person who is fabulously wealthy and one becomes attracted to that person, the example of Atmarama Muni, such person have no attachment to the material world. Still they perform bhakti to Urika, because that supreme person must possess something that no one else possessed. That means what attracts these Atmarams is not material. So there must be something greater than Brahman, otherwise they cannot become attracted. The Jnanis, when they become attracted to the Lord, they become pure devotees. They become practically immediately pure devotees because their mind is already free from lust, anger, greed, and so on. It's already pure, and that's liberation. So immediately they become. But of course, to attain liberation, by impersonal practice, very difficult. That takes many births. Of course, there are also the 4 Kumaras. When they heard from Lord Narayan, from Brahma, they became attracted. Their attraction grew when they saw Narayan. They became immediately pure devotees, and that's described also in 3.15.43 of the Bhagavatam. Tashara vindanayana sripatara vinda kunsanga mishra tulasima karan vivaya antargata savyevarena sakiratesham sakshoda akshasusamapisitta tambo. When the priest carrying the aromas of tulsi leaves from the toes of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, entered the nostrils of those sages, they experienced a change both in body and mind, and though they were attached to impersonal Brahman and understanding. So that's you will see in 719, Bhavanam Ganatem, Bhavanam Ganatem Vachanti Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samatma Sudurlava. That Jnanavamam Pavachina, when they become full of knowledge, then they surrender to Krishna. They understand him, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then they understand Vasudeva Sarvamiti. The Supreme Lord is everything. And that was realization. This Vasudeva Sarvamiti was realization of this 4 Kumaras. So similarly, the process of yoga can lead to bhakti. If the yoga realizes the super soul and then understands, then asks the question, where is the super soul coming? What is it? If they understand super soul is an expansion of Krishna, they come to bhakti. They have to realize that this super soul is an expansion of the Supreme Person who performs pastimes. So that's evolution from Paramatma to Bhagavan realization. So this is the essence. So this seeker, he sees this bright light of the Lord. If one comes from the darkness in the light, you don't, you come solely from the darkness in light, you don't see clearly. After some time you start to see because so the Lord's avulsions is blinding. So this mantra is a prayer to the Absolute Truth to take one beyond the blindness, because that brightness because the blindness caused by brightness of the ultimate Bhagavan revelation. Yeah, that's a problem. So Krishna is the last word in transcendence. It is, we can transcend his Brahman effulgence, then we come eye and eye with Krishna. And this will now go to text 16. That's the last verse for today. Let's see. 15. So are there any questions on this text 15? Yeah.
Because this Maharaj apparently is very personal prayer, so do we know who is actually praying?
It's unknown, but I call him the spiritual seeker, but that we don't know who it was. No. Good. Then we go to anything else, otherwise we go to 16. I read text 16. Pusannikarsi yamasurya pachapatya pujarasmin samuha teyoyatrupam kalyanitanam tate pashami yosaf also purusaswamasmi. O Lord, O my Lord, O primeval philosopher, maintainer of the universe, O regulating principle, destination of the pure devotees, well-wisher of the progenitors of mankind, please remove the effulgence of your transcendental rays, so that they can see your form of bliss. You are the eternal Supreme Personality of Godhead, like unto the sun as I am. So here, the overview again. You are Asmin, beyond Brahman is Bhagavan. Then Prabhupada analyzes all the Sanskrit words. Kalyana Tama. Bhagavan is the most auspicious realization. Pushan, the Lord maintains his devotee and everyone else. Swamasmi, how the living entity is one yet different from the Lord. And then the favor of the Lord sought by this prayer is fulfilled in pure devotional service. Nata. So in this verse that we read, there is the word rupam. Rupam. So the word rupam is form. So the Isopanisad is pointing to the personal understanding of the Absolute Truth. Rupan is not metaphorical, that because the devotee will praise, he wants to see that form. So it's not metaphorical. This mantra is an example of Ashintya Veda in action. So, Ashintya Veda, Ashintya means inconceivable. From our material eyes, inconceivable. So there is a personal and impersonal aspect of the Upanishads. If we want to honestly represent the Upanishads, we will have to see all what the Upanishads say, and not only the part that is in agreement with a certain philosophy. We need to see all of them. So how can it be conciled, the impersonal and the personal aspects? It's conciled by the Lord, by Lord Chaitanya. Asintya Veda philosophy. So that means also the Brahman is a personal aspect of the Absolute Truth. So it's the Brahman is also the Absolute Truth, but it's not completely realized. Higher realization is Paramatma, and the complete realization, which includes Paramatma and Brahman, is Bhagavan. So we have the overview here that so Yuda Rasmin, beyond Brahman is Bhagavan. That so Vaishnavas realize the highest truth is Bhagavan, and the impersonalists, they rely on an incomplete understanding of the realization of the Absolute Truth. So impersonalists make the error that Brahman is higher than Bhagavan. But this is not the conclusion of the scriptures. It's not there. In 1418, that's the chapter 14 is the three modes of nature. That at the end, Krishna says that Mamsyo Vyapacharana Bhaktirana Sivta Saktan Samatichitam Brahma Bhuyare Kalpate. By pure devotional service, one can transcend the modes of nature and come to the Brahman understanding and beyond. And then Krishna says, Brahmanoi Patishtanam. This Brahman depends on me. Brahman depends on Krishna and Bhagavan. That's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. It's not independent. He says, I'm the source of Brahman, I'm the foundation of Brahman, Krishna says. That if we compare the two, then the conception of impersonalists seems to be intellectually appearing, no personality, oneness. But it strips the absolute truth from the personal qualities. That absolute truth loses all emotional appeal, we can say. That is why that even within impersonalists, many practice bhakti, because they have emotional needs and relationships. But devotional service is different than impersonalist practice. In 9.2 we will in Bhagavad Gita we will learn Susukam Avyam, happy and imperishable, happily performed. So first, the Bhagavan is Kalyana Dhamma. So the Supreme Lord is the supreme realization. Those who go to Brahman cannot be fully satisfied because there is no reciprocation with Brahman. That the heart's longing for love, that's not completely satisfied in Brahman. So the Lord helps devotees by bestowing His grace. It enables devotees to rapidly make spiritual advancement. We are fallen in a well. We need a rope to get out the well. We cannot make spiritual advancement with our own mental concoctions. The bhaktas hold onto the rope and beg to the Lord, please pull me out of this. Get me out of this material entanglement. But the impersonalists, they don't have a rope to hold on. And they try to climb up the rope and not ask the Lord for help. It is possible, but it's difficult. So bhakti is easy. So Krishna in 8.14 says yes. Oh, what's happening here? No internet. Internet went off. We tried to connect to the other one, which is weaker, but
I think Windows is better.
yeah.
Maybe try again to connect to the Windows.
No internet. Connection unstable. Still not good. But we try. It's the only connection we have. So bhakti is easy. Bhagavad Gita 8.14, I think. Here the Bhagavad Gita. Eight. Okay. Ananya seta satam yomanchmati nityasa tasyam sulabha bhakta nitayuktasya yogina. Sulabha, very easy to achieve. Krishna says, for one who always remembers without deviation, I'm easy to obtain as son of Buddha. because of his constant engagement in devotional service, Krishna says, Bhagavad Gita 8:14. So it is easy to obtain. So persons who attain Krishna, Krishna says, Mahatmanas tu mam bhaktan devim bhagati ashrita. The Mahatmas, those who always think of Krishna, they are easy. Krishna says, for them I'm easily to obtain. But those who are not Mahatmas, says Bhaunam Jnana Varnam Te. Bhaunam Janamannam Te Jnanamama Papachate Vasev Samamiti Samatma Sudulam, after many births. So they have to wait a long time to come to bhakti, to have this connection in devotional service. So the process becomes difficult because, if we have, also for devotees, if you have misconceptions, then the process becomes difficult. So how do we get the mercy of the Lord? Mercy comes in different forms. Knowledge, taste, and grace or mercy. These three. Knowledge. The knowledge Krishna gives us, don't engage in sense gratification, speaks Bhagavad Gita. The taste. It is not easy to rise on the spiritual level, not just calming down the mind and become detached. That one must act on the spiritual level. Means practice of devotional service. Practical. So if one wants to be happy, one must act on the spiritual level in devotional service. Only then we can have experience the spiritual level and get taste. So that's the first thing. Knowledge, we get in Bhagavad Gita. Taste by devotional service. And then the third thing was mercy. So beyond knowledge and taste, there is mercy of grace. Just engaging in devotional service gives some taste. It can subside the miseries of material existence. By chanting, it will bring me to goodness. Even mechanical chanting brings one's benefit. The Lord helps his devotees by bestowing his mercy. We get moments of realizations, ecstasy, and being overflooded with ecstasy, with happiness. So Jiva Goswami says the word Bhagavan has two meanings. It means one who maintains and guardian. Guardian means, Ka means guide, leader, or creator. So Jiva Goswami is given a different explanation than the standard one. Standard explanation of Bhagavan is one who is full of all opulence. Van means full of Bhaga, opulences. But here it says, it's one who maintains and guides. So one who resides in everything, So everything resides in Krishna, and at the same time he resides in everything, because he enters everything as the super soul. Here, these are these two meanings. Then we have, again, we come to that. Two meanings. We come to that. Good. So then, Soan to Daswam. Oneness is quality. Oneness in quality may be emphasized at time, but that doesn't deny difference in quantity. So that's Asintya and Veda Tattva, one and different from the Lord. We are one in quality. Krishna is Satchitananda. We also are eternal, full of knowledge and bliss in our liberated state. We experience that. Now we are still, but by ignorance we are covered and we think otherwise, that's all. But we are both Satchitananda, but Krishna is unlimited. We are limited. That's a Cynthia Veda Tattva. That's at least an important aspect of it. So one has to move from the Soham realization to the Dasoham realization. Soham, it means Aham Brahmasi, I'm Brahman. But one has to come to the realization of Dasoham, I'm the servant of Krishna. That's so the realization of the impersonal is this Aham Brahmasmi. I'm spirit. I'm a spirit soul. But they don't know. They don't know I'm different. I'm not a body. I'm spirit soul. But they don't know who I am. That's not answered. I'm a spirit soul, but who I am? And that's Dasram. I'm the servant of Krishna. That's the first step, really, to come to Bhakti Dasram. And then when one becomes pure and becomes self-realized, then one will realize what kind of servant. There's a progression. So the scripture explains that the Lord is infinite and we are finite. That means we are different in that regard. If one practices spiritual life to understand the highest truth, one can rise to the platform of Dasoham. Dasoham, I'm the service. Of course, for the jnani, the realization that they are spirit is the eureka moment. But that is a brilliant realization and they forget everything else. But it is still an incomplete realization. It feels good to be liberated, no miseries anymore, only bliss. But and you enter the Brahmajyoti and it's nice, finally peace and so on. But after a few millions of years peace, you start to think, it's boring. Nothing is happening here. The soul wants activity. And its natural activity is dasram, servant of the Lord, and acting in that way. So therefore, they are in the Brahmajyoti and it's boring, and they cannot go to the spiritual world, because to go to the spiritual world, you must need a dasram realization. So they come back here to practice dasoham, become the servant of mankind. But not of Krishna yet, because they don't accept Krishna. That's a problem. So their intelligence is avisuddha buddhaya, impure intelligence. They didn't realize they are the servant of Krishna. We are part of Krishna, but therefore, because we are part of Krishna, we have to be connected with Krishna, with the whole. And that is done by dasram, by serving Krishna in devotional service. So, yes. Now we come to the next. Yeah. So, anyway, let's go. These are quite theoretical things. So this oneness with Brahman, it's a problem. It denies the eternality of bhakti. That we'll come back to this later at the end. That if one, yeah, if one denies Krishna, then what is the use of serving? That then for them, if the spiritual world does not exist, Krishna does not exist, then it's a better alternative for them to go to heaven, right? Then it becomes a better destination. But for a devotee to lose bhakti is a disaster. He does not want to go to the heavenly planets. Then he loses his bhakti because one becomes overwhelmed by sense gratification. The tendency for sense gratification is 1,000 times stronger than here. It's hell for a devotee to go to heaven. It's that when also this impersonal practice, it makes the heart hard. Because one must learn artificially to become detached from everything. The devotee is automatically detached. He knows everything belongs to Krishna, so he's already detached, it's not for me. And he used it in Krishna's service. And the result is also not for me. And he feels happy. But the jnani thinks, this is mine, I'm renouncing my wife, my house, my money, my bank, and balance and so on. I'm renouncing, it's all mine, mine, mine. But that's a misconception. Nothing is theirs. But they are renouncing, and they try to give up their attachment. Very difficult, because the soul must be attached to it, to something. So it's hardening the heart. So they focus on, I'm not the body. So it's not that a devotee is sick and we tell him you are not the body. No. It's our responsibility to help them, and to rise from the illness, not saying I'm not the body. So for practicing bhakti, we must have a soft heart towards devotees. And very important. Because this merging into Brahman for devotees, that they don't want that, because that's the end of bhakti. That is why the devotee gives up the urge to merge. So, in other words, there is jnana, which is pratikul and anukul, which is favorable and unfavorable. So we will look at it. So when the soul is accepted as a part of Krishna, if we know we are a part of Krishna, then that increases bhakti, that knowledge. That's good. So if we apply that principle, that we are acting as a part and parcel of Krishna, then by that practice, it calms down the restlessness of the mind if it's focused on Krishna and we do our service. This is favorable knowledge. So the goal of jnana in bhakti is to appreciate the glories of the Lord. The Lord is wonderful and we want to love Him. Srila Prabhupada emphasized philosophical knowledge. He stressed that one must rise beyond the bodily conception. That the dasram is a complete realization. The favor of the Lord is fulfilled in pure devotional service. That so we come back to, now it will start to make sense. We come back to the 15. 16. Yeah. So, why is jnana pratikul or favorable to bhakti? Yeah. That, yes, application, destination. Pratikul, anukul is, pratikul is unfavorable, sorry. That, so this is the impersonalist. And then we have here the anukul aspect. So we have explained that. Why is it unfavorable to bhakti? Or which jnana is unfavorable to bhakti? Which jnana is, yes, this is the jnana of those who are striving for Brahman realization. They think I'm going to merge with bhakti. That's their destination. The end of bhakti, we don't want that. Their practice is hardening the heart. The sacrifices, the giving up everything else artificially, makes the heart hard, too much austerities. And then for the practice of bhakti, the heart must be soft. And the oneness, the nice eternality of bhakti. They want to merge, but then there is no relationship with Krishna, there is no dasram. And then here you have the other aspect, anukul, what's good. The jnana that emphasizes that we are part of Krishna and that the soul is subordinate to Krishna, that's good. And that jnana that explains we are a part and parcel of Krishna, dasram, then it stabilizes the bhakti process. We want to engage in devotional service. It inspires us. That, and then finally we will appreciate the Lord's glories. And that is jnana which supports bhakti. That, so that is, yeah. So this first concludes with discussing the point how bhakti is the best process. How do we get the benefits of bhakti? So, like we are praying, we are chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, but it's also prayer to please my Supreme Lord. Engage me also for devotional service so that I can experience spiritual bliss, Ram. So the chanting is a prayer, and the fulfillment of that prayer is pure devotional service. That when we chant properly, with pure consciousness, then we experience Krishna dancing on our tongue, said. So one young girl in America asked Srila Prabhupada, said to Srila Prabhupada, when I chant, I see the light in my head. When I chant, Srila Prabhupada replied, continue chanting, it will go away. So you will transcend this Brahman. It will go away. So we do not only pray for the Lord, but we also receive the Lord's reciprocation. it purifies our heart and so on. So the chanting is a serious purification. The mercy is engagement in devotional service. How are you protected by Maya? Generally it happens by Krishna's grace. He pulls us out of the well. We do not have to expect supernatural realization. We need a simple understanding. We perform devotional service, and then Krishna will help me to advance in devotional service. When we render devotional service, we are accepting the mercy of the Lord. Yes. So, back to this one, just a few words. Atma Jnana is knowledge of the soul. Ishvara Jnana is knowledge of the Supreme Lord. Aiktava Jnana, that's my understanding here, is that the Jnana that helps one to merge in the Brahman effulgence. And that kind of Jnana, the third one, the devotees reject. That's not favorable. That's particularly not favorable for devotional service. Okay, that was 16. So we have now time for questions. 10 minutes. This is very philosophical. I did not. Normally, it's Isopanisad. It's good to read it again after studying Bhagavad Gita. You will get much more of it. Normally, we do Isopanisad after Bhagavad Gita as the last one. Because we are using a lot of terms you may not be which I used here, which I explained in Bhagavad Gita. But anyway, you can hear the recording again at the end. Yes?
In the first verse, it was said like the demigods cannot, are unable to reach the Supreme Lord. If we have access to devotional service, why don't they have access to it?
Well, demigods are engaged in devotional service, but they are sakam bhaktas, not pure devotees. Because pure devotion means anya bilasa sunyam jnana karmatanaktam anukulina krishnanam sirnam bhakti uttama. That's a verse from Rupa Goswami, from Nectar of Devotion, which you will study. And pure devotional service, Rupa Goswami said, is the void of all desire for material enjoyment and the void of all desire to become liberated. It is just meant, the pure devotional service is just directed to give pleasure to Krishna without asking anything in return, just to please Krishna with no ulterior motive. That's pure devotional service. And demigods are not situated in pure devotional service. They have subtle desires to control, and therefore Krishna has put them in charge of certain duties in the universe. And they are controlling the universe as his assistants, but they have the desire still subtle to enjoy as a controller. So they are not pure devotees. And what happens even if you have still slight desires to enjoy? You cannot know Krishna, and you cannot come in direct contact with Krishna. You are still under the modes of material nature. So they are not pure devotees. And we hear about that in the beginning of the Krishna book, 10th canto. We have Bhumi going to complain to Brahma that all these Kshatriyas on your service are exploiting her for their enjoyment, and she wanted help. And Brahma said, yeah, we must ask the mercy of the Supreme Lord. And there Brahma, Bhumi and all the demigods went to the shore of Svetadvip, a spiritual planet in this universe where Kshirodakasaya Vishnu resides, supersoul in everyone's heart, but Kshirodakasaya Vishnu is lying, is the source of the supersoul, but is an expansion of Krishna, and is lying on Anantashesa in the Milk Ocean, far away. But they went to the beach of the Milk Ocean, the White Ocean, and there they were. All the demigods were meditating on the Supreme Lord to come in contact with him, but only Brahma could come in contact, because he was a pure devotee. He has no material desires, different from the demigods. So only Brahma could come in contact with the Lord, and the Lord gave him a message. He asked that all these demigods should take birth in the Yadu dynasty. And yes, that he will come and appear to restore, to take care of all these demons. So demigods have material desires, subtle material desires, not like us, we mostly have gross material desires. But we should never forget these demigods are also all-pervading in the forms, in the energies of their service. Agni is in fire, is everywhere, where there is fire and heat. They are very powerful. They are controlling our body and make everything works under the control of the super soul. Should never forget that. They are very powerful. So we should never disrespectful for these demigods. Because sometimes these demigods, when they see that you become a pure devotee, and they are not, they become a little envious and they are going to test you. That's also there. That's in the Bhagavatam. That I try to say only things which are in the Bhagavatam. But then, yes, suppose you could go to the heavenly planets, there you experience so much subtle bodily enjoyment and opportunities that you forget Krishna. So mostly they forget Krishna. And we see Indra forgets Krishna regularly. And that's a problem, so a devotee does not want to go there. These demigods, after the end of their service time, they fall back again to the earth. But that can take a long time, millions of years. And the devotee does not want to go there. But the devotees, the demigods, they want to take birth on the earth. Because they know in a short human life, if they make it, they can go to the spiritual world. They know that. And they are waiting to take birth on the earth, especially within ISKCON. So many of the devotees are coming from their pious previous lives. Does that help to understand the demigod position? Any doubt?
Maharaj, I know it's not just question time, but I have one question. This is
Yes.
Bhagavan Narahari Das.
We speak a little bit more
I'm
about
actually
misconceptions. The misconceptions lead to trouble in spiritual advancement?
Yeah, which misconceptions are going to trouble me in my spiritual advancement? It are the misconceptions which prevent us to realize Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha Gyan means our connection with Krishna, re-establishing our connection with Krishna. To re-establish our connection with Krishna, we must know who Krishna is. Otherwise, we cannot know ourselves. If we don't know who Krishna is, we don't know ourselves, because we are a part of Krishna. If we don't know who Krishna is, we don't know that we are servant of Krishna. If we don't know who Krishna is, then we don't know that Krishna is Ishvara and controls everything. If we don't know Krishna, then yes, we don't know we are subordinate and that we are depending on Him. So every knowledge which tells us that Krishna is not supreme, that will hamper us. That is illusion, and that will distort our relationship with Krishna. So the yogis, they don't have the realization that Krishna is supreme. They think Krishna is in the heart of every time as a super soul. So they think the super soul controls material nature, but they don't know what the super soul is. They don't know about Krishna. They don't know that it is an expansion of Krishna. An impersonalist, yes, they also don't know Krishna. They think there is only spiritual energy. So this kind of knowledge of impersonalism, or thinking that I can merge with Krishna, that is very difficult. Makes our advancement in Krishna consciousness very difficult, nearly impossible. There are many devotees who were impersonalists before. They come to our movement and they have really difficulties. Difficult to overcome that conception if you have become attached to it. Yeah. Does that help to? Okay. I have a question here online. I'll read it.
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah, if you can explain one more time about Maya,
And Jogomaya.
and Yoga
Yes.
Maya.
Yeah, please.
So this is the spiritual and the material energy. That the material energy, Mahamaya, is explained in the Bhagavad Gita as the three modes of nature. And each of these modes have a different effect on our consciousness that we will learn about in chapter 14, that you have tamas, rajas and sattva. In tamas, we are attracted to intoxication, sleep, sinful activities, and we are completely dull. We don't know anything, completely confused. And the one who in passion is also confused. He doesn't know what to do and what not to do. He thinks it's the body and acts as being the body, trying to enjoy this body till the end. Those rajas. And then sattva. In sattva, goodness, the highest material mode, one understands that one is not a body, but has not realized it. And he comes to activities in goodness. Goodness which will not bind him to this world, is not attached to his world, it's not attached to his work, to the results and so on. And is the most happy in the material world. But that happiness is dangerous. Because one may lose the impetus for spiritual life. But then Krishna says one must transcend these modes. Beyond these modes there is a spiritual energy. And the spirit soul is made of that spiritual energy. But we are only at home in a spiritual environment. And that spiritual environment is an environment under influence of the yoga maya or spiritual energy. And that we find in the spiritual world. There everything is eternal, full knowledge and conscious. So in the yoga maya, whereas the mahamaya, the material energy, makes us forget Krishna and make us put ourselves in the center. But the yoga maya, the spiritual energy makes us aware of Krishna. And helps us to connect with Krishna at every moment, where the material energy makes us disconnect with Krishna, the spiritual energy makes us connect with Krishna. And so the spiritual energy is called Yoga Maya. This spiritual energy has different parts, different sub-energies, and one of the sub-energies is Ladini Shakti. Is an energy that gives pleasure in devotional service, but these are details. So that's the material and the spiritual energies. Now we are in this world. How can we connect with this spiritual energy? Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, he says, Mahatmanastu mam bhakta devim prakati ashrita. So the Mahatmas connect with Krishna. They connect with the divine energy, with the Yoga Maya. They connect with the spiritual energies, the Mahatma. And how do they do that? In the next verse, Krishna explains, Satatam kirtiyantunam yatanta sadrita avata. They do kirtan, and glorifying the Supreme Lord, engaged in devotional service, and that's their connection. So Mahamaya in the material world is under the control of Durga. That's right. But Durga has many names. Ambika is also called the wife of Lord Shiva, Parvati. She controls the material energy. There's the material Sakti. And that's another deviation, we didn't speak about that, but there are those who worship the Sakti, the material energy of the Lord. They are called Saktas, worshippers of Durga. And what do they want? Material opulence and power. Then they stay in this material world. So, how to get out of Mahamaya? That Krishna says, Mama Durachaya, very difficult to overcome. But those who are engaging in devotional service, Krishna says, they easily overcome Maya, because they come out of her influence. We cannot fight with Maya. Maya is a very strong energy, stronger than us. But she can only control the body, the gross body and the subtle body. If we don't identify with it, we come out of our influence by Krishna consciousness. We identify with our real self, and the misidentification with the subtle and gross body vanishes. Okay, anything else?
Raj, I heard that we are also known as a Shakti worshippers. or we don't worship Buddha, because again we are worshiping the energies of Krishna, spiritual of course. Can you comment?
That I don't know where you heard it, in what context, because that may importance. But we are worshippers of Srimati Radharani in our tradition, and she controls the spiritual energy, the Radhini Shakti. So by worshipping Srimati Radharani, we come under the protection of that energy. So we can only attain Krishna by the mercy of Srimati Radharani, by this spiritual energy. And of course, how do we get the mercy of Srimati Radharani? It's to get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And the representative of Lord Chaitanya is the Guru Parampara coming down, Prabhupada. That's where the mercy comes from. Okay. Thank you very much. So, Isopanisad ki. So tomorrow we have our last 2 verses, and then we will finish this very essential book of knowledge. Thank you very much.
His Holiness
Recording
Bhakti
stopped.
Maharaj